Music is the divine language of the heart. It helps us realize a fundamental truth of our human nature. When we are moved by a song's essence, its treble, its bass, its rhythm, its lyrics, its passion, and its depth, we understand that man must explore. And this is exploration at its greatest. Get ready as we launch into song exploration. Hey, Catalina.
Hey, Raphael.
It's good to be here.
I'm excited for today's song.
We got a new song we're going to break down. It's called Watching the Whales by Mr. John Lennon of the Beatles. And this was a song he did on an album called Double Fantasy Stripped Down on his solo career. And so we're excited to do this. Catalina, you want to do your background now, or do you want to just get into the song first and you do a little bit later?
Yeah, just a few facts to orientate ourselves. So this song was released in 1981 after John Lennon's murder, but it was in response to people who were having a hard time understanding his 5-year hiatus from the music industry. His son was born in 1975, after which he stayed home for 5 years and just focused on his family and enjoying his young son and watching him grow. And he had a lot of people in the music industry who could not understand, why he wanted to take a break from this. And so he wrote this song with his wife, I believe, with Yoko Ono, in response to that, to try to maybe help people understand what his thought process was.
I love it. That's perfect. And that makes sense. It's a really cool song. I call this the anthem to our extreme workaholic culture in society, in many of our societies, at least in the Western states, but not just in the Western states. Anywhere where we are workaholics, we're working ourselves to death. We're doing 1,000,001 things. We don't have an ability to slow down. This is a workaholic theme where anywhere in the world where we are no longer able to slow down enough to be mindful, to pay attention to reality, to smell the roses, to relax, to have 3 meals a day, to take breaks, to have sanity checks, to exercise regularly, and not be squeezed like an orange every single ounce of juice by a job, by other demands, really having balance and mindfully choosing what is the most important thing about life and being responsible for making those decisions. I think of the movie The Matrix. If enough people do something crazy and you get so let's say you have 2,000 people and you get 1,000 people are all acting really crazy. Well, at least you get the other 1,000 that are not acting crazy. But if that number starts increasing to 1,500 who are acting crazy and you only got 500 left, or 1,750 acting crazy and you only got 250, or 1,950 acting crazy and there's only 50 people who are not acting crazy, the 50 who are not acting crazy are going to be really tempted to feel like they're the crazy ones because they're the minority. And so this can happen in a rat race, and it's so easy because of psychology and our human instincts where we want to be successful. It's really easy for us human beings to get lost and to ignore what is fundamentally most important, whether it's our families, and not only that, just the things that are really good for us, really good self-care, taking care of ourselves. This song, I feel, is the anthem to kind of go counterculture, to say, pay attention to what's really good, pay attention to the most important things. Without any further ado, you want to get into the song?
Sure.
All right. So a few lines of the first verse. Here we go. People say I'm crazy doing what I'm doing. Well, they give me all kinds of warnings to save me from ruin. When I say that I'm okay, well, they look at me kind of strange. Surely you're not happy. You no longer play the game. So we'll stop there. We're not even done with the first verse, but the first thing that comes to mind for me is considering the source. Once again, going back to my earlier numbers analogy of the 2,000 people, you got to look at who's giving you the advice. Is that someone you want to emulate? Do they have a balance in their life, a happiness in their life? Are they as well-rounded? And really, the well-rounded thing is really important, at least to me, because they could have a ton of money, they could be super successful, but what's really going on? Is it a shell? Is it a mask? How holistically is it someone you would want their entire life?
Well, and misery loves company.
Yeah.
So that's what came to mind for me is like, typically, you're going to go do something that's different from everybody else that's in the rat race that's doing. And there's almost like some jealousy there. And it could even be people who are going to, in some way, shape, or form, benefit from you not taking a break. And so they're like, no, come on, you can do it, Or even if they're not going to they're not going to have any benefit for that. It could just be, well, I'm stuck in this and I'm killing myself in this. And so I don't want you to take a break because then that makes me think about maybe I should take a break and or maybe this isn't all there is to be. I mean, because basically that's, for him, just knowing the history behind the song, for him to take a 5-year hiatus from the music industry, clearly he saw something more important than the music industry. And a lot of people have a hard time, I would think, like, no, this is everything. This is God. We're making tons of money and we have people who love us. And like, what else could you want in life? Well, he found it, his son and his family.
No, that's a fantastic point. I mean, we've heard of that, and you bring up especially if you're a celebrity, because now you've become the machine.
Right.
And you're the machine that's making all these people money.
Yeah, you're
and
a cash cow.
They don't want you to slow down. It's
Right.
Let's do everything to get them ready for the next performance.
Yep.
I've heard this so many times on listening to, interviews and documentaries about successful celebrities that this happened to.
Well, that's one of the biggest lessons, right? Like when they're the younger artists, whether it's acting or music or whatever, versus the older, more experienced ones, is that the younger ones they're so excited for it, they just kill themselves. And they typically get to the breaking point and realize, I can't keep this up. And the older ones are like, yeah, I remember when I learned that lesson. Glad you survived it.
Well, it also reminds me, because there was a podcast with Joe Rogan interviewed Jewel. And what's really beautiful is she talks about mindfully. I mean, the brilliance. She's amazing. Jewel, we love you. You're amazing. She's just an amazing human being. I mean, and the wisdom is just overwhelming from this woman. I mean, I love Jewel, but one of the clips or one of the little things that she had mentioned is, I remember the studios came to see her and they were going to give her $1 million advance, and she had no money. Like, she was really broke. And so Joe's like, wow, like, how could you pass that up? And she consciously and mindfully said, if I take this money, the pressure is going to be so high.
Right.
And,
just to produce.
Right. So she said, I'm going to flip it on its head. I'm not going to take that money. I want to do it in a way where they're not, because if I don't live up to that standard, they're going to drop me. So she was mindful to allow herself to have her music grow organically and not to put all that pressure. And it worked. And then for a long time, she would do exactly what we're talking about, what John Lennon did. She took years off.
Yeah.
She would make a hit, and do something successfully and take years off instead of building on that momentum because she didn't want to kind of ride that destructive avalanche or tornado or whatever you want to call it. Tidal wave is what I'm thinking of, not avalanche. But she didn't want to get caught up in that and let it snowball. She chose to be mindful. And I think that's really wise. And it's cool to show counter against the popular culture that worked, because every other numbskull, or advisor or agent who's making money off her, they're not going to like that. Oh, no, you can't take 2 years off. I need to make my dough.
No, exactly.
I discovered you.
Well, you know what? It's not just that. I mean, obviously John Lennon's experience is the music industry, but this is true in any industry. I mean, you are earning money when you're working in most cases. And it's just so common that when someone dreams something bigger or more important than just the day-to-day daily grind, there's so many naysayers, and they have a plethora of reasons why, right? Some of them are truly scared for you and they don't believe there's anything there. I would say more often than not, it's not quite as altruistic, though. It's a little bit more like, I'm jealous. I don't want you to succeed, because then it just makes me, I don't like my job either, but I've kind of accepted this is all there is type thing. And yeah, it's just true, right? Like how every successful entrepreneur who actually makes it, practically everyone that you interview or you listen to interviews with, they all talk about how people were like, no, you're never going to make it. You're not going to do it. Da, da, da. And I don't know, just, yeah, when you want to do something different than the standard life, it makes people, I don't know, they naysayers, right?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it could also apply to even parents sometimes when they have children. A lot of parents can fall for the trap of trying to live vicariously through that child, and maybe some of the hidden dreams or the things that they wanted to do that they never got around to doing, they want to force, in essence. They might not consciously say that, but they want to force that child to follow in that path so they can feel validated. And or they want more safety. Maybe they, whatever it is, they don't want to accept that child for who that child is and let that child explore and grow and kind of learn and cultivate for themselves. And there's a happy medium here, right? It doesn't mean you let children do whatever they want. It doesn't mean that we can all do whatever we want to do. We have responsibilities, and having responsibilities is good. However, paying attention to our talents, paying attention to the things that are most beautiful about life, having a balance and not being stuck as a corporate slave, for instance, in a rat race, and being forced to just give your life for this corporate machine, I mean, is crazy. So that's something that comes to mind.
Yeah, something that came to my mind that made me laugh a little bit is The Office and Andy Bernard, his character, when he wants to go quit his job as a manager of the Scranton branch and go be an actor and a singer, or performer of some sort. And it just makes me laugh because everybody, if you watch that episode, everybody in the show is trying to say, like, you are going to fail. Like, you will never make it. Like, we're telling you, don't quit your day job. Like, you will absolutely fail. And it's really funny because it's, the irony is, like, he really wasn't that good. And so he did, he had an epic flop where he, like, got turned into a YouTube sensation, but because they were making fun
Baby
of him.
Wawa.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're making fun of him.
But
He got
what's really
successful
cool
by being made fun of.
is the end of that is that led to him being invited into his beloved Cornell as a speaker, as a joke. But he did a great job. And he wound up then getting a job at his Cornell, and he loved it. And so it's funny because I think amongst the humor and the irony of it, the end result was that he left, and maybe part of his journey was to fail first, but he found something that he was so much more happy at.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just, I don't know, it's just a funny example.
No, it's really cool.
Came to mind.
It's really cool. I had a friend who was a colleague and left, really well-to-do public company and went to work for the government. And this person's parents were really big on the security of the government. And knowing this friend, you just knew that this person was not the type that it seemed like that would make sense for, her to go to the government. And yet she did. And true to a lot of people gave her advice, like, it'll be really good. Some people like, be careful. Some people say no. So she was confused, but she made a decision. What was cool about it is it was worse than her wildest dreams. But at least now she knows, and she can share that with her mother. And what was great? She got a new job, and it was better than the job that she left in the first place. And it's kind of beautiful to she paid attention to reality. She didn't have all the answers. And I like how you said about Andy in The Office, which is kind of funny. Like, it looks like it's going to be a disaster, right? But even then, he learned, and he found something that was better for him, because staying at Dunder Mifflin was not ultimately good for him either.
Right.
And he finally found something that was good for him. Now, obviously that's a show, but you bring up, that's a whole other discussion, Catalina, about like, how do you know? I think when you discern what to do, you'll find enough voices. So going back to the Matrix, when people are stuck in the Matrix, stuck in the rat race, and they're kind of like at their blinders on and they're just focused on one thing and they're not seeing everything else, you're going to have those negative Nancys, those negative voices like, oh, you know what? You'll be rolling, da, 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 da. But if you kind of look around, you can find inside your soul and other people who can hopefully affirm you into discovering what you're really meant to do. There's a concept, a Japanese word, and I don't know how to pronounce it well, Catalina.
Ikagia, I think.
Ikagia is I-K, I think it's I-A-G-A. And what it means is the reason for being. And basically you ask 4 questions. You ask yourself, what do I love? Question 1. What does the world need? What am I good at? And what can I be paid for? And there's a beautiful imagery and diagrams on Ikagia. And the closer you get to the center, because you may never get perfectly in the center, or maybe you will. Maybe as you discover your life's passion and you learn more about yourself, you can get to a place where you're as close to perfect or really well in the center, but you're going to feel fulfilled. You know, and I've heard people say it. I've heard one of the creative, I think it was like creative director, creative somebody from Pixar. There was some documentary and he said, you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I had my dentist said that to me in the last month. So there is this idea that doing what you love can fulfill you. And that also there's this fear in not being really risk adverse and following what's safe and choosing to do some things that are not so good. And Catalina, can you look up the actual pronouncement of the word?
Yeah, so I just looked it up. It's ikigai. It's
Ikigai.
Ikigia, and I'm very sorry for butchering that initially. Ikigai.
It kind of reminds me of like icky guy. Oh, that's my cheat sheet way.
That's actually the phonetic spelling of it.
Ikigai?
Ikigai.
Ikigai. Oh, it doesn't work so well, does it? Well, it means the reason for being, which I think is beautiful. Another cool quote to come out of this is it reminds me of the movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And in that movie, he says, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. And I think once again, if you don't stop to have fun, if you don't get enough rest, if you don't get enough exercise, if you're not eating well, basically, if you're not taking care of yourself, what is the purpose of living? And not only that, but how many times you have people, they waiting for retirement and they're working themselves to death and then they get a disease and they can't even enjoy their retirement or they drop dead. I've heard this several times. So I think taking the time to pay attention to what really matters, this song kind of really helps me. Anything else on that first area, Catalina?
I think we could go for days, but we should probably move on.
Let's move on. So the next line, people say I'm lazy, dreaming my life away. Well, they give me all kinds of advice designed to enlighten me. When I tell them I'm doing fine watching shadows on the wall, they say, don't you miss the big time, boy. You're no longer on the ball. And, you know, once again, this whole thing of like leaving the rat race or doing something different or even going off on your own. It reminds me of a Jim Carrey speech that I heard. And to paraphrase, I guess he said his father was really talented and could have been a comedian. He said, but his father was really afraid and didn't want to put his family under that much risk. Like, what if he tries to be a comedian? He doesn't work out. His family will suffer. So he chose to be an accountant, and he put all his energy and his time and his blood, sweat, and tears into being an accountant. And in a real bad economic time, they laid off his father, and the family suffered. And Jim Carrey says it taught him that no matter what, there is no security. There is no true security. So if there is no true security, why don't you go after something you really love? And that's why I like the icky guy. That's why I like IKEA guy or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's beautiful to kind of do that. Anything on that last lines of the first one?
I mean, I think it's very similar to the lines that we read before. It's just, people, well-meaning or not, have a hard time seeing people do something different. It's scary and it's new and it's weird. And I don't know if you're going to be successful. And maybe I want you to be, but I'm nervous you won't succeed. Or maybe I don't want you to because I don't want you to show me up. Like, there's so many reasons why. And I think, people just have a hard time understanding especially when you're doing well, I think is a big thing, right? Like if you're not doing well, if you're suffering at your job, it's like, well, what do you have to lose, right? Like you suck at your job, so you might as well leave. But when you're doing really well and you're at the top of your game, to say, I'm going to leave, I need a break, I want to take time away, I want to be done forever. That's really hard for people to understand because they see that as the epitome of happiness and success. And like, this is what everybody else is working to get. And you have it and you're letting it go. Are you crazy? But it just goes to show, which I love, that there's so much more to life than just having a really great job or having a really well-paying job or having lots of people adore you and worship you and want your autograph and follow you around with a camera. There's more to life. And that, I think it's just really cool that he, was centered not just, anytime somebody does something different, I just love it. I love, I can't even think of the right word right now, but the people who go off the beaten path, so to speak. But I love that that his family was the reason that he wanted to take time away. His family was the more important thing in the midst of probably being able to afford anything and everything he could possibly want. And I just think it's such a great reminder to us that, all that glitters is not gold. And, even when things seem really great, there was I can't remember. I think it was Jewel actually who was talking about celebrities and, if celebrities were so great, they'd have, if that was the ticket to happiness, they would all live forever. They don't. They actually have a really bad, statistic of celebrities who have really serious problems like addiction and stuff, and some who wind up dead or killing themselves on purpose or not. And it's just very tragic endings. And so it's just even seeing that, I think is I don't know, it's really nice. It's really important. I love that he saw something beyond that,
Yeah, no, it's really cool. You made me think of past interviews I've seen with Cameron Diaz and Gwyneth Paltrow, who all pretty much say the same thing. I remember Gwyneth Paltrow was saying she stopped doing a lot of movies, and she was saying, I just don't really enjoy doing that. Like being away from my family for months at a time, stuck in some hotel room with these grueling schedules, like, basically saying without her saying, I've made a lot of money. Like, why don't I live my life?
Right.
And she's doing other things that I think are more meaningful to her. And I think Cameron Diaz stopped and she no longer does a lot of movies and she's had children and she's enjoying her life. Now, these people are very wealthy and they're able to do that. It's much harder for people who don't have those opportunities, but we can challenge ourselves. What are some other things to do? Which, let me go to the next couple lines, and I do have some other quotes I kind of want to get into.
But you're going to go on the chorus?
Going to go to the chorus. I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. I really love to watch them roll. I no longer riding on the merry-go-round. I just had to let it go. I love that. Because to me, it's like he's just enjoying simplicity. He's just enjoying living. And
he's observing the rat race.
Right.
Like he's an observer now. He's on the outside of that watching it go down and he's like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good enjoying my life. It's funny though, because obviously leaving your job and being able to, like you said, if you're financially secure enough that you can just go take 5 years off of work. I'd like to do that. I can't, but I would like to. But, I think that even within having a job, you can choose to be a part of that exhausting rat race and that incessant competition, or you can also choose to remove yourself. I think that it's just exhausting. People constantly vying for the upper executive approval and, praise and just, it's so hard to stomach. And I think that, I don't know, I relate to this because I kind of see myself as someone I work really hard. I do my job. I want to do a good job. That's important to me. But as far as like looking to get that recognition and looking to get that next level and whatnot, it's just the cost of the mental obsession that you have to want that well is just not worth it to me. Like constantly thinking about it and, thinking about every little way that I can make myself look better than the next person. And oh my goodness, like talk about like creating hell in the present moment, at least my opinion. I'm sure there are people out there who love the competition and they thrive on it and it's fantastic to them. Good for you. Corporate world was made for you, my friends. Not so much for me. I am an ill-fitting person to the corporate world because I'm very grateful to have a job that pays the bills, but it is not where my passion lies. And it is certainly climbing the corporate ladder, often based on BS, BS achievements, not even usually based on legit merit, is just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And you make me think of that story you and I were talking about a couple days ago.
Oh, the fisherman?
Yeah, I'll paraphrase it, and you help me out with it. But basically, this MBA goes to this remote island. Let's just call them Island of Spain. And he, in this beautiful coastal beach town, and he sees this fisherman coming into shore, around 2:00. And he strikes up a conversation, the MBA. And he says, so tell me, what were you doing out there? He's like, the fisherman said I was getting some fish for my family. He's like, interesting. He's like, your boat. He's like, it's decent size, but did you ever think about getting a larger boat? Fisherman's like, no. He's like, the boat that I use is fine. He's like, I feed my family with this fish, and the excess fish we buy and sell to get other goods. And he's like, well, how long do you fish? And he's like, about 2-3 hours a day. He's like, well, what do you do with the rest of your time? The MBA said to him. He's like, well, I get up, I have a breakfast with my wife. I take my kids to school. We play a little bit. He's like, I go out and fish. He's like, I come home, I take a siesta, I get up, I have dinner with my family, I go play guitar in the town in the bar with my amigos, I sip some wine, and I start the day over again. He's like, it's a beautiful life. He's like, well, listen, the MBA says, I'm an MBA from, a top tier school, and I got a plan to make you a lot of money. What you need to do is get extra money from that extra fish you get, and try to invest in getting some more boats.
Fish longer days.
Yeah, fish longer days to get more fish. So then you'll have that money and you can buy more boats. And then if you keep buying more boats, you can sell, you can have more capital and more produce and more fish to sell. Then you can buy more boats. And eventually, he's like, well, eventually, what do I do? He's like, eventually, you can start a company. You can take that company public, and then you can, make a lot of money bringing it public. You'll have stock, et cetera, et cetera.
You can move to the mainland to operate your company.
Yeah, you can move to the mainland and operate your company. He's like, well, how long will this take? He's like, yeah, maybe, 10 years at the earliest, but probably 20 years. He's like, okay, and then what do I do? He's like, well, the great news is once you sell your company and make all that money public, you can move to a small island. You can get up late. You can spend time with your family. You can go fishing for a few hours a day. You can come home. You can hang out with your family, take a siesta, go to the bars, play guitar with your amigos. I mean, so the funny thing is he's already living this life. Mm-hmm. And I remember telling that story to a friend of mine, and he was like, bullshit, that's not life. Right. And, it's a story, but there's a truth to the story. And, it's not going to maybe happen so perfectly like that, but there is a truth to the story. You ready for the next verse?
Let's go.
Okay. Verse 2. You want to read it?
Sure. People asking questions lost in confusion. While I tell them there's no problem, only solutions. While they shake their heads and they look at me as if I've lost my mind. I tell them there's no hurry. I'm just sitting here doing time.
You got anything on that?
I mean, it's very similar along the same lines of the other stuff. I mean, I think it's, again, people just have a hard time understanding that there could be a different path and that you could be happy on something different than the highway to success and, the glitz and the glamour and all that stuff, But he's basically saying, like, I'm not living in like, there's no problem. Like, I'm living in the solution. I'm living my happy life.
I love that.
You know, and how they don't understand, you know, they shake their heads and they look at me as if I've lost my mind, you know. Again, people just don't understand. They think, like, how could you leave, you know, at the height of your success and walk away? Like, don't you want more? Don't you want more? Right? That's like always the question, it seems like, is don't you want more? Well, when is more enough? And I think that he's basically saying, like, I'm good. I've got enough money that I can take time off. I can spend 100% of the time with my family. I don't need to work. We're good. Like, this is why I've worked so hard over the years, is to have this time with my family. And, you know, he tells them, you know, he's just kind of relaxing in life right now. Like, that's what I get from him I tell them there's no hurry. I'm just sitting here doing time. Like, I'm just relaxing in life. There's no, like, what's next? You know, because that's the other thing that's funny. I think and I'm speaking as a type A, so this is no hate on type A's, but it's funny because type A's are usually like, what's the next goal? We have to know, like, what's the 5-year plan? What's the 10-year plan? What's the 25-year plan? And I think planning is important. There's obviously a part to that. But we all, I think, can admit that there can be over planners where it's like to the point where you can't even enjoy the present moment and you leave no time for deviation. Did John Lennon think about wanting to take time off when he was in his 20s? Probably not. He was in his prime. He was enjoying his life, but he got to the point where he said, there's something more important now in my life that I didn't have before that's changed my perspective. And now I need to take time away. And yeah, I don't know.
No, that's great. I mean, it also reminds me, I mentioned The Matrix before, but if anyone is a fan of the show The Office, the U.S. version of The Office, there was a scene that they never publish, but you can find the scene on YouTube through the Peacock app, I think it is, or their channel, where they do a skit on the Matrix, and it's so funny because I think his Stan was the security guard, and they have him who pretends to be the brother of
Dorpheus.
Yeah, Dorpheus, the brother of Morpheus. And he takes Dwight Schrute, and Dwight Schrute's now the manager, and he kind of takes him and you know, and he's like, you get the choice to take the red pill or the blue pill. And I forget which one is which, but one of the pills is, you know, to stay in the Matrix. And he tells him, like, we are in the Matrix.
Stay in the fake life.
Yeah, stay in this fake life, or do you want to go in the real life? And Dwight chooses to stay in the fake life because he's like, you know what? He's like, no, I heard you very clearly. I understand. He's like, this is just...
like, wait, I don't think you understood.
He's like, no, I heard you very clearly.
No, I understand.
He's like,
everything in my life is so great.
Right,
I just would rather stay in the Matrix right now.
Right. He's like, I just got promoted. I'm engaged to a woman I love. Like, things are really good here. I think I'm just going to stay here. And I think that can be a trap. You know, you can fall for the trap of staying in something because everyone else thinks it's good. Well,
and because you're complacent versus, I think happy versus complacent are two different things. And if you're happy, like, whatever you're doing, if you find joy in getting paid to pick pins up off the carpet, that is awesome. That's the purpose of life, in my opinion, is to find happiness in whatever contribution you make to the universe, right? But I think so many people are stuck in not happiness, and they're just stuck. And it's comfortable where they are, comfortable enough where they fear leaving, and the risk of doing something different seems so scary. But back to your example about Jim Carrey's father, I mean, I personally believe there's no such thing as security. Like, it's all a risk.
Right.
And we say statistically, right, like, oh, maybe this is only a 30% chance of something going bad, or 15% chance, or 5% chance. But really, it only matters if it's you or it's not you. Like, if it happens or doesn't happen. Statistics are great when you're talking about going into the situation, but when you're talking about, like, your life, it either did or didn't happen. It doesn't matter if 1 out of every 5 billion people get cancer. If I get cancer, like, that's going to change my life, you know? Right. And so I think, I don't know. Like, people love to, we think that we take the less risky choice sometimes, but it winds up biting us in the butt later. Yeah. Because it's not the risky choice. You know, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And it's funny because career-wise, we don't talk about diversifying your portfolio, right? With investments, that's a really hot topic. That's
right.
that's like lesson 0.001. Like, like that is, or 0.0001. Like that's the basic of the basic, is don't put all your eggs in one basket. But with careers, that's never discussed. Like most people are, and it's that loyalty to the company and and what that winds up doing is having you take all the risk as the employee. And, sometimes it's not worth the risk, is just the reality. And sometimes people want something different.
Yeah.
And I think that's freaking awesome.
Yeah. No, and I love it because when they say people asking questions lost in confusion, he's noticing like they're lost.
Yeah.
They're asking these questions. They're putting the pressure on him, but he's fine. He's doing all right. And he can see that. Also speaks, hearing you talk, Catalina, that it seems like he hit the wall. So, that's the other thing. Like, we have to have this enlightenment to make these changes. If everything's good while you're in the rat race, I guess you don't need to change because everything's good.
Why not?
Enjoy
You found
it.
a good
Maybe
niche.
that's a sign that it's good for you.
Totally.
Then you maybe might even speak that you have some balance, and that could be cool. But you could be in denial. But I love this line about problems and solutions. He tells them there's no problem, only solutions, meaning he's focused on solutions to really living. And I had a mentor who always would say that to me. He'd say, living in the problem, focused on the problem, is nothing like it is living in the solution, focused on solutions. And he would say the problem looks nothing like the solution, and thus living in the solution looks nothing like the problem. And it's just a focus and a reminder to stay focused on the solution and, what really is paying dividends, back to your stock analogy. So that was the last verse. I do have something else I want to share, but let's just hit. So then the chorus repeats itself, but they mention that last line. I'm just sitting here watching the wheels go round and round. I really love to watch them roll. No longer riding on the merry-go-round. I just had to let it go. And it says it 3 times. I just had to let it go. Letting go of the past, letting go of what is safe, letting go and risking a little bit. And if you can't risk everything, doing a little bit. I want to mention, Catalina, there was a Joe Rogan talk, and some of the quotes that I got from the talk are really profound. He mentions a quote by Henry David Thoreau, and he wrote something in a book called The Walden in 1854, and it says, most men lead lives of quiet desperation. And Joe Rogan says it's one of his favorite quotes ever because it's true. And I'll quote Rogan. He said, we just live in here, just in this world where you just can't wait to just run away. But I think one of the reasons why these people have this deep-seated anger, resentment, is there's a bunch of people out there that have these lives that are deeply unsatisfying, because I think there's so many people that are working all day long doing something that is deeply unsatisfying and almost painful and soul-killing. So they're killing themselves and their souls. They're stuck in traffic all day, and then they're stuck in a cubicle at work. They relish the time to take a shower or go to the bathroom stall and look at their phone. And he says, they really literally do that. That's the highlight of their day. And, getting stuck in traffic, coming home, exhausting, trying to watch TV for a little bit before they have to start this whole thing over. Like, that's the rat race. And it just keeps building and building and building, and they water it. And it's just like, it can become, crazy. And I'll just do another quote. He says they get dissatisfied and, they go to work. They have to sit in this stupid cubicle, and they have to do these meetings, and they're basically being a slave to a corporation that doesn't care about them, that treats them like robots. They're talking to people in human resources. They're sitting down with the supervisor who forced them to have a good job evaluation, and they have to focus on that. And they have to change and do all this paper pushing. And they need to pretend that they're enthusiastic about the company. And they have to say that this company is their future. And he said, so he'd be like, just kill me now. There's not a lot of people out there that would rather, there's a lot of people out there that would rather do something else. And instead of being in some crappy job. And I love it because I think it's really true. And I think this song kind of speaks to that. It's that inner search for what's really meaningful. And it's not to say that everyone who's in the corporate world is leaving these lives of quiet desperation. If that's what you're meant to do, then you're going to feel like you're thriving, you're going to love it, and it's going to be meaningful, and you're not going to see it as such. But some people are trapped that way, and they don't need to be trapped that way. And Rogan kind of even talks about like having the dignity. He mentions even making furniture. So it doesn't have to be, he's not talking about just becoming a celebrity or making millions of dollars. He's saying like if you design furniture and there's some meaning to that and you're making something beautiful for someone, there's dignity in that. And, I just love that this song kind of speaks to that inner search and choosing what's not always popular and listening to your heart, listening to your soul, and investing in what makes a difference and what pays dividends and what is most important in your life. Not giving up everything else, but having a sense of balance. I just love that.
I agree.
Yeah?
Well said.
So, anything else?
I think that's a wrap.
All right, that's a wrap. Until the next song, signing off. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for exploring this song with us. Be sure to listen to all our episodes on song exploration.